All right, commissioners, we are going to go ahead and get started today. Before we get to our formal agenda, we have a couple of items to start us off on this beautiful Tuesday. Warmest day of the season upon us, yay. And I'll just remind everyone that Commissioner Allen is out of town and not able to join us today. So a couple things to get us started. The very first thing I want to do is I want to welcome our students, our young people who are part of the LEAD program. So welcome. Where's Shannon? Shannon's there in the back. Shannon, do you want to just take a minute and tell us about the kickoff of the LEAD program and what you'll be doing over the next couple of weeks with these awesome young people?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, City Commissioners, City Manager. So we have young people here that are part of our 13th cohort of the LEAD program. LEAD is an acronym that stands for Leadership and Employment Achievement Direction. It's a civic engagement, leadership, and employment program for 15 to 24-year-olds, and this group is the 18 to 24-year-old cohort. So they're going to be learning a lot about how to be a great employee and a great citizen over the next 2 weeks.
Nice. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. So I'm looking at at our interim city manager. When is the? Well, I'll let me get started with this, and then I'll ask you. Okay. So next, I'm going to come up here for proclamation. I'm going to ask Kristen to join me. So I have a proclamation that I'm going to read, and I'm going to hand it over to Kristen Bennett from our mobile GR department. And Kristen, I'll let you say a few words afterwards about the importance of this event. So we're coming up soon on the Ride of Silence, and so I have a proclamation for that. Whereas what began as a one-time ride in 2003 to honor a fallen bicyclist in Texas has become a global event that takes place every single year. And whereas the Ride of Silence is a silent, slow-paced bicycle ride to honor those who have been injured or killed while cycling on public roadways. Whereas on the third Wednesday in May, the Ride of Silence traverses and unites the globe, sending a quiet but powerful call to the public that bicycle safety is the responsibility of all users of public roads. And whereas the City of Grand Rapids supports this event and remains committed to providing a safe bicycling environment for those who live, work, and play in our community. Whereas in the third year of the city's Driving Change campaign, we hope to further reduce the number of crashes involving cars and bicycles. And whereas the City Commission approved a Vision Zero resolution in February, which demonstrates the city's commitment to working to eliminate all traffic-related injuries and fatalities. Now therefore I, Rosalind Bliss, Mayor of our amazing city, do hereby recognize the Ride of Silence as an important event that reminds all citizens to acknowledge that bicycles belong on public roadways, and we ask motorists to commit to safely sharing our roads with people riding bikes. Kristen, do you want to say a few words? Okay.
Just wanted to quickly say I appreciate the proclamation and that we welcome everybody to come out to the Ride of Silence on May 16th and ride with us. I won't be riding myself. I have a broken hand, but to come out and enjoy it. Even if you don't ride, come out and meet with people and experience the event. Sadly, there are people that are injured and killed every day in our community and throughout the state of Michigan and throughout the country. And our goal, we just launched yesterday with our Summer of Safety. We're really focused on bicycle and pedestrian safety in the city of Grand Rapids. And so this is just an opportunity to come out and share with others and kind of do a community healing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. All right, so next I'm going to ask, and by the way, I'll be joining the Ride of Silence, so if you want to come bike with me, you're welcome to. Next I'm going to call up Susanne Schultz, and I'm going to ask her to share with us information about 2 recognitions that we recently received. So Susanne, I'll hand this podium over to you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Woo. It's a little hot today. I just wanted to share with you, we had applied for the 2018 Governor's Fitness Award it's their Active Community Award, and Kristen was there with Chriselle to be recognized both at the state capitol and an event in Detroit. We submitted an application. It was the first time that we have been recognized for the Governor's Fitness Award. We were selected as a finalist based on the city's bicycle-friendly streets and nationally heralded efforts to promote bicycle and pedestrian safety education. The Parks Master Plan, promoting a park system that provides greater inclusion and access to recreation opportunities with a focus on persons with disabilities, and then also safe sidewalks that help foster walkable communities through a Vital Streets program and our age-friendly work. So kind of the compilation of the work that you've been seeing over the past 2 years, we were able to capture in the application. We were not the winner, but we were a finalist, and we just wanted to share that with you, that we're, from the statewide perspective, trying to share our success and share that information broadly, so that we're being recognized, but then also people can learn from us. The second piece that we have, and I put in front of you, I wasn't sure if you all had this, I gave you a copy of the Vital Streets Plan, and then in front of the manager, he also has the design guideline book. I figured you didn't want to have, or maybe it's in front of Anita and I messed up the seating. But yeah, so I didn't know if you all wanted this great big huge thing, but if you do, I can provide it to you. In 2016, December 2016, you adopted the Vital Streets Plan, and then subsequently last fall, we completed the Vital Streets Design Guidelines, and we worked with Nelson Nygaard on that and design team, as well as the Vital Streets Oversight Commission, and about 40 community stakeholders, which were broken into different mode groups. So we had a bicycle group, we had a transit group, freight, and so on. Over the course of the 12 months in developing both the plan and the design guidelines, the goal was designed to set reduce single occupancy vehicle traffic from 95% down to 45%. So pretty ambitious. And you may remember we did the same thing for the Michigan Street Corridor Plan to try to come up with multiple modes, and we've been making improvements, such on Michigan Street, the significant pedestrian improvements to improve that sidewalk and improve the walkability. So a lot of that guidelines and a lot of those discussions and trying to get that mode shift has been a core piece of this. And we were recognized by the American Planning Association. We received last week in New Orleans their award, the National Planning Achievement Silver Award for Transportation Planning for the Vital Streets Plan. So it's a juried event, and they get lots and lots of applications. So we were very excited. This is really, we've received the recognition from the National American Planning Association for our great neighborhoods. So for example, Heritage Hill's been a great neighborhood. Rosa Parks was identified as a great place last year, and then the downtown market has also been identified. So very happy. This is the first time we've had a plan award, although we try to submit every time. So if you have a chance to read the award application, I did attach it to the agenda item, and I think it did a really great job of capturing the work effort that went through and the purpose of the plan and what we're hoping to achieve.
Thank you, Suzanne, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And really all the city employees who work so hard on these plans and this work, so thank you. So commissioners, next I'm gonna invite up two guests, Chris Cameron and Sam Moore. They are here from Silent Observer, and we're just gonna have a brief presentation on the work that they do, specifically here in the city and the impact that they have, that the organization has. Some of us were able to go to the luncheon that occurred a couple months ago, where they honored a number of individuals in our community, but also talked about the important work and the role that they play. And so I had a conversation and a meeting with them afterwards, and I just thought that it was really important that we all know about this work, because they sometimes do this quietly and silently, and so it's important to elevate and to make sure people know not just about the work they do, but also that if they have tips, how to connect with them.
Yeah,
so welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor, and congratulations on another successful Mayor's Greening Initiative this past weekend and planting a lot of trees. It was fun to be there. Since being brief is not my forte, I will turn it over to Chris Cameron to discuss the Silent Observer program. But again, it's an odd situation because we're Silent Observer, and so a lot of our work is silent. But I thought it was really important since it's a local program. It's housed right here locally. And so the tips that are taken from local residents are handled locally, and that means it's more efficient and more effective. But then more importantly, more than half of the program's work is done here within the city of Grand Rapids. So I just thought it was really important to kind of bring it to your attention and reiterate. I know a lot of the residents and the commission hear about it on the news, call Silent Observer, but you don't really always know everything that goes in behind the scenes. So I want to turn it over to Chris Cameron, the program director, and kind of walk through where Silent Observer is at and some of the things that the program is doing here in the city.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what Silent Observer does and to offer to assist you and any of your departments in any way we can. Silent Observer was started by the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce and the Grand Rapids Police Department back in 1972 with the purpose of soliciting citizen participation to solve crime. We were one of the first programs in the country to have this kind of program. By guaranteeing anonymity and offering a cash reward, we felt that people would open up and share what they know about crime, especially if they didn't have to give their name and were assured that they wouldn't have to testify in court. Our promise of anonymity is what makes Silent Observer a trusted community resource. We are so committed to keeping that promise that in 2006, Silent Observer lobbied legislators in Lansing and got a bill passed into law that says Silent Observer tips, phone records, notes are considered confidential communication and cannot be subpoenaed or FOIA'd. Silent Observer uses the latest and greatest in tip-taking technology. Tipsters can call us at 774-2345. They can submit a tip online at silentobserver.org. And we also have a new mobile app. With our web and mobile app option, users can upload pictures and videos. They can add more information, and we can even have a two-way conversation with that tipster. When a person submits a tip, they receive a tip ID number, and that's what they need to follow up on a tip or claim any award that they might be eligible for. Rewards are authorized monthly by our board of directors, and those rewards are given for tips that lead to an arrest, and that suspect is bound over to circuit court. Since Silent Observer's inception, the program has been instrumental in assisting law enforcement in the solution of thousands of felony crimes ranging from murder, bank robbery, sexual assault, armed robbery, burglary, kidnapping, fraud, child pornography, and drug dealing. And the value of property, drugs, and cash recovered due to tips is over $6 million. In 2017, we fielded over 2,100 tips, and we received another 2,700 follow-up calls or contacts via our web or mobile app. So in total, we took over 5,000 calls that our law enforcement partners didn't have to. That's a reflection on how trusted we are and how safe people feel in contacting us. 55% of the tips we have received since January are about crimes occurring in the city of Grand Rapids. People call because they are tired of the drug dealing. They are tired of the shootings, and they are passionate and desperate to keep their neighborhoods safe and crime-free. And also, they're concerned for their families. They're calling about their children. They're worried about, their children being safe. When a case is headlined in the news, your residents use Silent Observer to share their important information about crime because they want to help right the wrongs of others and remove criminals from our streets. Now, some people are going to say, well, they're calling just for the reward, but I have to tell you, only 30% of the rewards we authorize are ever claimed. I just wanted to show you this map. It kind of shows where the areas where tipsters are reporting crimes that are taking place or have occurred in the city of Grand Rapids. Now, one of our most successful and impactful programs is called Fast 50, and the Grand Rapids Public Schools use it along with almost every middle and high school in Kent County. Larry Johnson, who is on our board, has been a huge proponent of this effort. Since the beginning of the school year, tips from students have led to guns, knives, drugs like LSD, acid, cocaine, and marijuana, assault, extensive damage to property, a threat of violence, and bullying. And just a few weeks ago, we received a tip from a student in the evening on a Friday night who wanted to tell someone that their friend was going to commit suicide. It only took 40 minutes from the time we received the tip to the time the child was in the care of professionals. The beauty of our program is that the tips are taken locally and are sent to the schools or the proper authorities immediately. We started Fast 50 back in 1998, before Columbine, because we knew students needed an easy and anonymous way to report crime occurring in their schools without fear of retaliation or being labeled a snitch. With the Attorney General's push of OK to Say, we will most likely just market our regular Silent Observer program to our students instead of Fast 50 moving forward. We are a firm believer in not duplicating efforts as not to waste valuable funds and resources on successful programs already in place. Silent Observer's Fast 50 is working very well in the schools, but since OK to Say is here to stay and generously funded by the state, we will find another equally successful way to empower our youth to stand up and speak out about crime. Apprehending fugitives have been an important directive of Silent Observer. So for the past 3 years, we have produced the Love Does Not Hit Domestic Violence Wanted poster in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So last October, police asked us to highlight 45 people wanted for domestic violence, and 25 of them were picked up. Our residents are not tolerant of domestic violence, so the tips came pouring in, yielding great results. A couple of years ago, Chief Rahinsky asked us to create the Caught in the Act initiative. Law enforcement sends us surveillance photos of those who have stolen from stores, used stolen credit cards, broken into cars and buildings, have been peeping Toms, assaulted people, committed armed robbery, vandalized property, and a host of other crimes. And we post those surveillance photos on Facebook and ask people to ID them. Well, we seem to get a lot of traction on this, and it's been very successful with scores of cases solved. Even though Silent Observer works on a very small budget, the impact it has on the safety of our community is huge. Silent Observer is a 46-year-old nonprofit that continues to be a proactive solution to stopping, solving, and preventing crime by empowering citizens to use their voice to speak up against crime. Our biggest challenge is and has been raising enough funds to meet our operating budget of $150,000 a year. On the screen, you can see how much we raise from fundraisers, businesses, and a few police agencies that make a yearly donation. I am Silent Observer's only employee, and we have a volunteer board that provides guidance. We are good stewards of the donations we receive, as each one is extremely important to the financial health of our organization. So we have 2 fundraisers coming up, a golf outing on June 20th at Stonewater, and then on November 29th, we're going to roast Judge Johnston, and it's going to be his retirement farewell roast. His family asked us to organize that for him. So if anyone is interested in coming, we would love to have you. So I wondered if you had any questions that I could answer.
Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner?
Thank you so much, Chris, for this presentation and sharing this. I'm concerned about that noise.
I think it's out. Is it construction?
Sounds like that's drill or something.
Can
Yeah.
someone check into it? I would hate for us to be taking action that we're not taking and then learning about that later. But I'll keep talking while it's being
Tom,
checked
are you
out.
looking into that? Thank you.
Thank you. And the fire department is going with them, that's great. So Chris, thank you so much for sharing some much needed information for the public to hear about. Chris, I don't know, some of you may or may not remember, but Chris pitched at the SAFE pitch night. And Chris has been joining some of our conversations about the work group that I'm a part of for sex trafficking and providing some really good feedback on some really critical issues in our community. So thanks for being here and sharing this information with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. All right, commissioners. Next, that will take us to our action items today. And before we get to that, I wanna remind everyone that we have 2 executive sessions to go into right after COW. So I'll be calling the question for executive session at the end, and we'll go down to the city attorney's office in the law library. Okay, next that will take us to a resolution supporting the efforts of the city of Grand Rapids to seek designation as an age-friendly community.
So moved.
Support.
All right, and Suzanne and Ginny are here this morning to talk to us about this.
And I'd also like to recognize Courtney Magaluk and Jay Steffen, who's not here, but Jay has also been working on this, and lots of really great, exciting work. And so Ginny wants me to talk more, I think, than she wanted to. So the World Health Organization has started their Age-Friendly Communities program in 2006, and the AARP launched it in April 2012 in the United States. And really the idea is to look at what is age-friendly within a community, and that's a community for all ages, but particularly they're focused on seniors. And Ruth Kelly has been instrumental in kind of really having these conversations with Area Agency on Aging, AARP, and other community stakeholders focused around this issue. And through the AARP work and the WHO program development, there's 8 domains that they identify for community quality of life that attributes to really kind of aging in place and healthy living. And those are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, and community support and health services. And we do have like this fun little booklet, if you're interested, that is available through AARP. If you're not familiar with the AARP's website for age-friendly communities, I'd highly encourage you to take a look at it. It's really a phenomenal resource. The mayor also identified in her 2018 State of the City address the Where We Live Communities for All Ages book, and that's also through AARP, and it identifies best practices that are happening throughout the country, really innovative solutions, partnerships, and ideas to really benefit everyone. And when we think of age-friendly, when people talk about in equity work, the curb cut effect, that curb cuts were created, because of persons with disabilities, but delivery people benefit with their little trolleys and mothers with strollers, that really, as we talk about how do we make this a really great place to live, focusing on these items really can cause, it creates a benefit for everyone in our city. Through the discussions that we've had with Commissioner Kelly and AARP and the Area Agency on Aging, there were 3 listening sessions that were conducted in 2016, thought leader sessions, where we had 3 different forums at the Kroc Center and Area Agency on Aging, and we wanted to get a sense of what would the priorities be. And these listening sessions were initially identified kind of as a scoping process to understand where work efforts might be needed and how best to serve the community as we seek this designation and to start the conversation. Ginny at that time at Area Agency on Aging, she was working there and really became very passionate about this topic, and we have been so fortunate to have her serve on our staff and work on this project. She has put her heart and soul into this, and we're so greatly appreciative. And I'm going to let Ginny talk a little bit about the efforts this past fall for community engagement and the outreach that we did and the game that we created.
So we ended up having a citywide listening tour that included more than 23 locations. We sent a list of those to the commissioners and the mayor, and some of you attended those, which was wonderful. We had more than 300 people that participated, and we received more than 2,000 comments. Of the 8 designations from the World Health Organization, 4 of those bubbled to the top as important to citizens of Grand Rapids. Those were communication, housing, which was not surprising, affordable housing all across the city, many different issues around housing for people that live in their own homes or people that live in senior living communities. Transportation was another issue that popped to the top, and also outdoor spaces and buildings. And we also found a lot of connections between our younger people and our older adults. So a lot of connections between our millennials and our baby boomers. So we think that this work is not only going to benefit older adults, it's also going to benefit residents and visitors of all ages.
Thank you, Jenny.
In front of you, we did find this, there's this little graphic that shows kind of the tentative work schedule. Based on the input that we received, the 2,000 comments from dozens of meetings, we, as Jenny mentioned, we refined that into 4 work groups. And we don't have to cover all 8, but there are threads of the other 4 that kind of will be involved with the 4 work groups that we've identified. And those work groups will start meeting. We've provided the mayor with a list with Commissioner Kelly's guidance of suggested partners to serve as an advisory board. And then with the work groups, we will be starting that work. We'll be extending the invitations later this week with the approval of the resolution and then gathering everybody. The goal is to have this completed by February of 2019. We really have viewed this similarly to the South Division work and Southtown and Hartside work we're doing right now as how do we engage those persons that we normally don't hear from, that we maybe traditionally aren't used to coming to city meetings, that we're really going out and meeting them where they're at, that we're engaging their population with people of the population and really trying to have a significant impact in preparation for a citywide master plan. And so this effort is really helping to build that wealth of knowledge and different engagement techniques. For example, Ginny held this wonderful meeting with the refugee community and almost a dozen different languages were spoken at this meeting. So we're learning a lot through these engagement efforts, and we really view this as helping to build the master plan, but also being very mindful of what's important to our most vulnerable citizens.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. So commissioners, I'll open up for questions. I'll make a few comments. So first, thank you for your work on this. I know many of us attended some of the meetings last year and had an opportunity to learn more about what it means to become an age-friendly community. But also we had an opportunity to talk to a lot of individuals who really want to age in place. And I had several conversations with individuals who felt like there's a lot of energy and talk about being a great city for millennials, but what about individuals who are aging? And I was really clear that that's a priority as well. We want to be a great city for everyone, and we want people to be able to grow up here and raise their families here, but also age in place here. And so I think this initiative really sends that strong message that we're listening and that we care. And I don't know if any of you were able to read through all of the comments from the survey that was done. It was a lot of information, but I found it incredibly insightful and really compelling. And it's one of the reasons that I included this in my State of the City, that I just feel like it's perfect timing as we look at moving forward with the master plan. This ties into that. And then secondly, a couple things with process. We had a couple options. We could have just sent a formal letter from the city saying that we wanted to be engaged in this work, but we felt it was important for the full commission to be a part of this and show that it's a priority, and that's why there's a resolution before us today. And then I'd love for Commissioner Kelly, who's been unbelievably engaged in this process, to say a few words, and then we can open it up for additional comments or questions.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I, first of all, want to thank you and this commission for your support in doing a resolution and for you embracing this in your State of the City address. Because other cities that have embarked on this, sometimes it faltered because there'd be a new mayor or because the mayor did not embrace it. So it was really important that we all do. One of the best things that happened was our hiring of you, Virginia Smith. She totally has embraced this, and the number of sessions that she had on the community was impressive. I just wanted to say that 3 that I went to just give an example of how committed she has been to reach out to everybody in this community. Senior Neighbors was the first one I went to. We met with an Alzheimer's group. We met with an LGBT group. You just heard about her meeting with a refugee group. So she has met in every single ward, and I would encourage those of you who are involved in the planning processes that are just getting started to, and I know, Jenny, that's even more work, but to invite her out, because again, we are really trying to reach all sectors. As far as ARP, I highly recommend you do look at the website. Thank you, Suzanne, for mentioning that. When I went to a conference a few years ago, I was actually on the hunt for information about affordable housing, and although they had information there, what I really woke up to was ARP's role in creating livable communities for seniors. And when I went on their website, I thought, this is a total menu of options for millennials. It matches perfectly in terms of parking and bike lanes and walkable communities, all those things that those who are aging, and there are many of us, I will include myself, need to do so that when we age in a healthy state, that we're not uncomfortable and we're not disabled, but that we are really working to be healthy. And speaking of that, we just last week, and I know the mayor was there too, we joined disability advocates in a conversation about how we can age in place more comfortably. Finally, yes, this feeds perfectly into the master planning process, and I just want to, for the millions that are listening again out there, encourage you to look into joining one of the work groups that will be formed. And thank you, Jenny, for the incredible effort you've made to make sure that we have a diverse advisory board.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? I still have more books in my office. If you want to grab some and hand them out, you're welcome to do that. So, all right. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. Thank you. All right, next up will take us to a resolution approving a request from 9Volt LLC, which is Hopcat, for a temporary outdoor service permit in connection with Hopcat Full Circle 5K event on May 27th.
So moved.
Support?
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, on April 11th, 2018, 9Volt LLC, doing business as Hopcat, submitted their application for a temporary liquor license to be issued in conjunction with their third annual Hopcat Beer Me 5K post-race celebration to be held on May 27th, 2018. The application has been reviewed by all of the required departments and is being recommended for approval.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution authorizing a contract with public agency. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Support?
All right, so commissioners, this was presented last week, and before us today is a more formal resolution outlining the process. Let's see, who do I have listed to talk about this? Asante is not here today. Eric, do you want to
Sure.
fill us in on anything we need to know? I think we're all pretty well briefed on this.
Yep, so for the millions watching at home, right?
Yeah.
So what we'll do is talk a little bit about the process. So we had a public hearing on March 27th on the 4 zoning ordinance amendments that are part of the Housing Now package. And following the hearing, Commission talked on April 10th about how do we get closure on what to do about those four items, and it was determined that working with public agency, which is a human-centered design thinking shop that's part of WMCAT, would be the best way to do that. So on their April 24th meeting, Kirk Eklund from public agency came and talked about how the process would work, engaged Commission in a discussion about the framework, and Commission gave him some really good input about that helped him to design a proposal. So the process will be that in the month of May, remaining month of May, Mr. Eklund and public agency will design the process, and then they'll do that using focus group work and their community catalysts. And then after that's done and we all agree that that's in good shape, they'll go out and do the engagement. The cost of the engagement is $21,000. And public agency has done this work in the community for several clients and has done very well at that. So most recently, many of us observed their work with Grand Rapids Public Schools, which was done very well and produced, I think, really good results for that agency. So it's our recommendation that we proceed with this. And one thing to mention too is that this ties in really well with Bloomberg Philanthropies grant that we got. And so we'll be able to use those dollars to pay for this engagement.
So commissioners, if you're not familiar with that, the Mayor's Challenge, when we were selected as one of 35 cities to move forward with that, came for the next phase, $100,000 to move forward with some testing and prototyping. And one of the elements of that work was really rethinking community engagement to make sure that it's done in a really authentic way. And so this ties into that, and we'll be able to use this process to really test out some of the ideas that we are submitting as a part of that grant as we move forward with the next application, which will allow us to compete for $1 million.
Super.
Yeah. Great. The other thing I'll say about this, and I'll see if there's any other questions or comments, I really hope that as we move forward with public agency and as we take more time to really listen to the concerns that were raised around these 4 proposals, I really hope that everyone who came to our city commission meetings, I hope they feel heard. Mm-hmm. I hope they realize that their voice matters, that we see this as a complex problem, and we all need to be at the table. And yes, we may have different opinions about how to get there, but in the end, we all care about the same thing, and that is making sure that we are a city where people can afford to live. And so I'm glad that we hit the pause button and that we're going out and we're spending more time in community. And I really hope that that message is sent loud and clear to our neighborhoods. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Commissioner?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you for paving the way to get this money from Bloomberg, because it's really important, I think, too, that we do this in process, and it's nice that it's not coming out of the general fund. And that, I know we talked about closure, but I think in some cases it might be direction. We have taken on a very huge and complex issue. We've been talking about it for 3 years, and I know that we hear both the impatience with how long it's taking versus other comments about we're not taking enough time. So it's a point of tension, but I think we'll certainly get direction out of this, and I'm excited about engaging, and I thank you, Commissioner Jones, for really raising up the Urban Core Collective as one voice in this, along with groups like Seeds of Promise in the neighborhoods and Homes for All. So I think that there'll be an opportunity to really have a robust engagement, and I hope too that we also look at the history of housing discrimination as a part of this, so that we open our eyes to how we got here in the first place.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution authorizing an agreement with Kaboom for a community build playground at Eastern Park.
So moved.
Support. All right, and David Marquardt is here. I want to, as David kicks us off, I know we're all familiar with Kaboom, but I want to say my thanks to both David and Tom and city staff who worked really hard to make this possible. There was a little bit of a hiccup with some contract language that we had to work through, and I really appreciate them coming to the table to figure out how to make this possible. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for your support. If any of you have watched the program Parks and Rec on television and seen the episode about Kaboom, it is absolutely 100% spot on, and it's fun. So when we get a design and build day set, I encourage all of you to participate to the extent that you're available. But this is a resolution authorizing a contract with Kaboom for a community build playground. We worked with the funder to look at areas of the city in which they might be interested based on areas of need. We have identified Eastern Playground up on the northeast side as one of those playgrounds that really needs to be completely removed, demoed, and pulled out and replaced. So great opportunity up there at that part of the city. No dates have yet been set for design day and build day, but as soon as we get notice on those, we'll be sure to come back and let you know, and ensure that you can all be a part of this fund. So.
Thank you, David. And David, for those who haven't been involved in a Kaboom build, so I have multiple times, both as a city commissioner and then when I was the director at St. John's, we did a Kaboom build there for the kids. And I know during those processes, during the design part of it, they always included children in creating the design, which is so fun if you haven't been a part of that, to watch kids draw pictures of the playground that they hope to see. Right. Some of the ideas are so fun, like, trapeze off of trees and stuff like that, which isn't reasonable, little liability there, but it is a really fun process. And so I'm assuming that will be a part of this design as well. And then typically Kaboom works with nonprofits who work in the neighborhood. Can you speak to that? Like, who will be a part of this Kaboom build?
Absolutely. So we have partnered with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks on this opportunity. They are doing a couple of things. They're leading the fundraising effort. So the partner organization is required to raise $8,500 for this build project, and Friends will be taking that role on.
Great.
We are also working with community partners for that design day, for that build day, a number of which have been identified already. And as soon as we get that list firmed up, we'll come back to City Commission with those items.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? All right. It'll be fun. And then as soon as we have a build day, make sure you let all of us know so that if we're available, we're able to be there. It is fun. The hardest part is at the end when they rope it off and they tell the kids that they have to let the concrete dry for 24 days, or 24 hours, and that they can't go onto the concrete. That's typically the hardest part of the day. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. Thank you, David. All right, next is a resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider fiscal year 2019 service provision fees.
So moved.
Support?
All right, Jeff.
Good
That
morning.
was not a resounding support. As you can tell, we all love fees and talking about fees.
But I think you guys met Keith Heiberg before. He's our budget analyst, and he's done all the heavy lifting on this, so I'm actually going to have him present this item too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And I know I've received a hard copy. Did everyone receive a hard copy?
Yes,
Because it's really small print.
I have ledger copies if
Okay.
anyone needs any.
Yeah, Commissioners, do you have extra copies?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you need a copy, I'd say it's easier looking at paper than computer, quite frankly, because the.
Function on here.
I know, but it's a lot.
Yes,
So
yes, it
you
is
can
a
use your
lot.
computer, Commissioner. Our greenest commissioner up here. All right.
All right, so each year the Budget Office is tasked with compiling a full list of fees that city departments charge the public for services provided. This is in compliance with City Commission Policy 700-10, and that's called the user fee policy. The City Commission policy requires a public hearing be held annually to receive public comment on the user fee schedule before the fee schedule is submitted to City Commission for adoption. So this committee of the whole item is to request a resolution scheduling a public hearing to be held during the May 22 City Commission meeting. The public hearing notice will be published in the Grand Rapids Press on Sunday, May 13, with a link for citizens to review the fee schedule online. The final FY19 fee schedule will be submitted for City Commission consideration at the June 5 Committee of the Whole meeting, and this is to support the budget that is going to be adopted on June 12. The second page of the memo of this agenda item outlines how the fee schedule attached to this is categorized. There are 6 categories that the fee schedule is separated into as requested by prior city commissions for easier analysis. And the categories are as follows. The first fee schedule that you have in your ledger form as well as in the agenda packet shows all existing fees, no matter if there's a proposed change or not for the fee for FY19. All the existing fees then have a label on the far right side of the schedule of a change code. The change code is either A, B, C, or D. And I'll go through what each of those is. In the agenda packet, I do have change code A and B. Fee schedule is separated, but in the ledger packet I gave you, I did not print copies of those. You can see any of the change codes A and B on the existing fee schedule. Essentially, any fee with a change code of A means that the fee is not proposed to change at all from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. And if any fee has a change code of B assigned to it, that just means that the fee is changing by cost of living adjustments, which we use as the consumer price index or the estimated rate of inflation. I believe per the City Commission policy, those fees are essentially automatically approved by Commission. So the ones you'll be interested in are going to be the fees that have a change code of C, which you have a separate schedule for. And any fee that has a change code of C represents fees that have larger than cost of living adjustments from FY18 to FY19. And then there's also a separate schedule for fees that have a change code of D. And what D means is that these fees are not achieving 100% full cost recovery for the service that they're charging for. And then lastly, you should have a schedule that looks different than the rest. That schedule is just the new fees that are proposed for FY19. A little bit easier to read because there's just 1 year of data on there, and that's the fees that are proposed for FY19. So if you have any questions about the fee schedule in particular, I can try to help answer them. If you have any department-specific questions, I may not be able to answer them, but I can take the question down, and I know there are some department representatives here today too, if you have any questions. Otherwise, there's time before the public hearing is going to take place that you can email any questions to Jeff, and he can send them to me if he needs me to answer them.
Great. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions, and just to remind everyone, so this public hearing is scheduled, if we vote on it, will be on May 22nd.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner?
I'm looking at the new fees, and so I know that we use the BSA software for all our property records and whatnot, and it's a really nice system. We're now going to start charging people to look up, if you're not the owner of record, you're going to start charging people $1 to pull those reports for properties that you don't own. You know, my past life was in real estate as an appraiser, and so I had one of these accounts where I had to, some municipalities didn't let you, it had the same system, you know, it's always been free in Grand Rapids to look up any building, any property you want, and now we're gonna start charging $1. I mean, I just know how much that adds up to when you're a real estate professional and how many properties you have to look up in the course of your daily business, and so at some point that's gonna get passed on to, you know, it's gonna make appraisal costs go up, it's gonna make real estate brokers have to do more work. I just wonder what the rationale is for charging that $1, and I think it, you know, in some way it reduces the transparency of the way we operate in the city, that you can no longer look up properties without having to subscribe to the service or pay a transactional fee for that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. My other concern is the potential impact it would have on individuals trying to gather data.
Yeah.
You know, we just did that whole request for data around housing, and there's a lot of researchers in this community that we work with. So I'm a little concerned with that, and it does seem inconsistent with our goal to have open data and be more transparent.
And just to clarify, you're looking at item number 2 on the new fee schedule, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I believe those are just that someone comes in and requests a physical copy of it. I think the online access is free of use.
I'd just like to
so we will-
confirm that, because I know that
Confirm that, yeah. for
I mean, I
sure.
still have an account that I have to,
Yeah.
you know, if I want to look something up in another
I-
municipality, some of
I
them
think
charge
the-
$1 just to log in and check that record, and so I just want to make sure that, again, I think accessibility to data for
Yeah.
the real estate community and for people who are doing general property research in our.
Almost 100% sure there's people coming in, but we will verify and let you know.
Okay, I can see if we have to print something off, that absolutely makes sense, but for digital access, I don't think that's a good course of action.
Yep,
Yeah.
I can get clarification for you on that, and then we can send an email around if that works.
That'd be great.
Okay.
One other thing, and I see there's some changes to the refuse collection stuff, and maybe this isn't the venue to talk about this, but we look at cart recovery and some of these other fees. One of the complaints Commissioner Rephart and I get from our neighborhood folks a lot is for recycle carts that people fill with trash, and then they sit there. And so if there's a way we could do some sort of fee to have those collected, recycling
carts.
bins get filled with trash and they sit in the street, and then people don't take care of them, and how we create a mechanism to either charge for that or have some sort of fee that we can, with a sticker or something, to pull those out so that they, you know, get back into service and get emptied. I know we try to do the best we can to educate people to empty them, but it's at our monthly neighborhood association meeting, it's a constant communication that we get. So.
I see James in the back, and James, maybe you can be prepared to talk about that when you do your presentation to the commission on the budget. I think we've all heard those complaints. The other complaint is when there's contamination in the recycle bins, and how we can enforce around that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yes, so I'm just really looking at this, but I'm curious, is Suzanne still here? there she is. I'm curious to know, during our housing discussions, we've been talking a lot about the fees associated with developers being able to, what is it that's required of them in order for them to do part of their development? And consistently, we've heard that that's tied to the fees and that the fees are a separate discussion. So now that we're discussing the fees, have you made any adjustments to the fees? Are you proposing any adjustments to the existing fees that are in question, tied to kind of the issues that we're seeing with housing? Or should we be looking for that to come after public hearing?
Commissioner, we anticipated that in our budget when we provided that to the city manager, that we would need a general operating fund offset or a housing fund offset. But that is in the planning department budget, which we'll be presenting to you guys later for discussion.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, just one thing. I do not remember whether it was 2011 or 12, but we had a study done by Plant Moran.
We did.
And
Commissioner Schaefer and I were on that committee.
Yes, yeah, but it was really good.
It was really good.
And I would highly recommend perhaps staff could send it out to us so that commissioners who were here post 2011 and 12 will understand that we were really struggling with, we were talking about, can we compare our fees to other communities? Well, that is not a good way to go about it, and departments were calculating their fees using different rationales. So Plant Moran helped us put together a plan for that so that we would have full cost recovery. And I know that this is the kind of reading that'll get you to sleep at night if you can't sleep, but I would highly recommend that you take a look at that to better understand it before you make decisions.
So you want to see the study?
Maybe hopefully it's electronic, I don't know, but.
Yeah, I think it is electronic. That would be good to just send that out to the full commission for those who haven't read it. It was good work that was done. I mean, it was a few years ago, but I think it's still relevant.
Yeah.
And I believe their work helped develop this, how the schedule is laid out as well.
Yeah.
It is relevant because that's the basis for the fee methodology. That's how we do it, so.
Well, and I would remind the commission, I don't know that we need that to be reminded, but it was part of our discussion that fees are very different than, the general tax dollars that come in, because they are specifically tied to something that one person or one company would get.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. So if there isn't any, I'll call the question. And again, this is to set the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next up will take us to a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the third extension to water and sanitary sewer service agreements between the city and our partner communities, extending the term of the water and sanitary sewer agreement. Hello, Ms. Eastman, come join us and tell us about this really fun.
What am I doing now? Yes.
Resolution.
So I was here.
On the floor?
Oh, sorry, can I get a motion?
Support?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so I was here at the end of March to talk to you about the Fifth Amendment to the water and sewer agreements. Now this is the next step. So back in 2014, we were due to extend the service agreements. That process was paused so that we could address things like connection fees, those various issues I talked about at the end of March. So we went through with the amendment process, and now we're here to officially extend the water and sanitary sewer service agreements out to 2043. I'll remind you, with our customer communities, they enter into a 30-year agreement every 5 years. It's an evergreen clause. We extend that an additional 5 years. So we always have a 25 to 30-year notice if a community would like to leave the system, those kind of things for planning. So, yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, thank you. All right, Commissioners, next that will take us to a discussion of next steps in the appointment process for filling our upcoming, Third Ward City Commission vacancy. So just I'll kick this off and then I'll turn it to Commissioner Lanier. Commissioner Lanier and I have had, am I missing something? Oh, no, we did that earlier. Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm like, I don't think I'm missing anything. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we did that, Suzanne did that at the top of Cal. So Commissioner Lanier and I have had an opportunity to actually, we've talked multiple times over the past week since Commissioner Allen made his announcement last Tuesday. And I'll share with you some of the initial thoughts that we had. So Commissioner Allen will be with us until June. So the appointment for the interim or an individual to fill the vacancy is for roughly 16 months. So that's the amount of time that will be left of his term that needs to be filled. And in thinking about this interim period, we spent a lot of time talking about what is really needed around this table, and especially in light of the fact that we have so many critical issues before us. And I don't have to list all of them. We all know what we're facing. But I think the most important one is selecting our next city manager. And we talked a lot about the need to have somebody who is well-informed, but also someone that can hit the ground running. And I know all of you can relate to the fact of what it feels like sitting in this chair for the first time and the significant learning curve that every single one of us had as a commissioner, and I know even myself as mayor. And really the need to have somebody that doesn't have that significant learning curve, that can really truly hit the ground running and focus their time on serving as a city commissioner and do it well. So we talked a lot about those needs, and then also the fact that come July 1, we will be roughly 6 months out from individuals filing petitions to run for this office. So there will be an election next year in the 3rd Ward, and voters will have an opportunity to select their next city manager. So we talked about some of the feedback that we heard from the community about feeling like when there's an appointment that it creates an unfair playing field when it comes to the election, and really wanting people to have an opportunity to run if they're interested in serving. So we talked about all of that and what we believe the current needs are. And through that process, we started thinking about who potentially could serve, could step into the role, hit the ground running, and serve really well for a period of 16 months. And not have to focus on learning the job or even on campaigning next year. And it was through that conversation we started looking at potential individuals in the community and who could potentially fill that seat. And so I'll turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Lanier, to share with you our thoughts on what we would like to recommend this morning in moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just add a few comments before kind of getting to that point. It's like a soap opera now. It's just taking too long to say where we are. But anyway, sorry. I respect Commissioner Allen's decision and recognize that he is in a position where he had to make such a really tough decision at a critical time in his professional life. But it actually is a really critical time for us as a body. And within the next 90 to 120 days, we will be making some of the most critical, significant decisions that this body makes. And one of which the mayor has already mentioned, which is the city manager selection. In addition to that, I think about some of the housing discussions that we've had, and we've been talking about housing for several years now, and I still have questions that I may lean over to my colleague and say, okay, I thought I understood this, but something was said that has confused me. And we're now at a point now where we're deciding on probably 4 of the major critical areas with housing. And then another one is the police community relations funding that we've set aside and trying to determine how best to use those funds, and having had conversations or having this committee who's looking at police policies and recognizing that they potentially will come with some recommendations on how to spend that, and making sure that there's someone there to understand kind of the history and the background behind that. And then I think something we talked about earlier today was the age-friendly community, and just having someone who has the experience of making sure that they can speak on the behalf of a diverse community, and in this case, our senior community. So with that all being said, the mayor and I have had some discussions about not having a process that includes an opening for application and interviews and things of that nature, but to recommend that we appoint Jim White, who in the past served as a commissioner for the city of Grand Rapids, and to ask him to help us fill a gap that we are currently faced with for a year and a half. Jim cannot run again, so there would help us to kind of honor what the mayor has talked about, which is kind of having these, someone having a leg up if they're running in an election. So colleagues, we're asking that you all would share your feedback on this recommendation to appoint Jim White. The appointment would not take place, physically, the appointment would not take place until after the seat is vacated, which happens in June. I forget Dave's last day, the 12th?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't happen officially until after that. But we would make some type of a commitment before that, and then appoint him formally after the vacancy occurs. So with that being said, I think that kind of sums up our conversations, and now it's now we're looking to answer whatever questions you all may have or hear your feedback.
And Commissioners, I'll add one more thing. In thinking about appointing former City Commissioner White, we've had several conversations with our city attorney. One being just what we're charged with, and did we have, as Commissioner Lanier indicated, do we have the ability to just appoint and not have to go through application process? And the answer was yes. We are charged with filling the seat to fill a vacancy for the remainder of an open seat, and there's no language that implies that we have to do it a certain way. We have full discretion to select and make an appointment, and the process we decide to use is completely within our discretion. So I just wanted to make sure that we've been in conversations with our city attorney, and we know that we're well within our charter language. So I'll open it up for thoughts and comments. I served for 8 years with Commissioner White. I was able to work side by side with him on a lot of complex issues. I have the utmost respect for him. I think his wisdom and experience would add a lot to this body, especially during this critical time. And so I'm very supportive of selecting him to fill the remainder of this open seat, which again would be 16 months. So I'll open it up for questions, comments, thoughts. Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Lanier, and I know this must have been a very tough conversation to think through. A couple of things. I know there's always been this tension between an appointments process and wishing we could just have an election. Mm-hmm. And then there's the timeline, which is, as you said, very short. I too have a lot of regard for Commissioner White, having served with him and his wisdom, and appreciate the fact that he would not be eligible to run, so we wouldn't be making our own choice, and the electorate would still have that opportunity. But I have a question, and this really is directed to you, City Attorney. Can you talk a little bit about the term limits language, and if there's any conflict with that?
Certainly, Commissioner. Section 2 of the charter, as it relates to term limits, talks about the eligibility to run for an election. It does not include appointments. What it says is that if you're a commissioner for 2 terms, you cannot run again for another 2 terms. And so Commissioner White in this case would not be able to run for another 2 terms, which isn't his intent nor the commission's intent. And then it says that the mayor can run for 2 terms, can sit for 2 terms, but cannot run for another 2 terms. And so again, it's about the eligibility to run for an election. It goes on to say that a commissioner can, who has sat for 2 terms, can then run for another 2 terms as mayor, but not as commission. And then the last part of the language in that section talks about if a person has been appointed and they've been in it for 2 terms, then they have to count that as one of their terms. And so if they choose to run again, then they can only run for one term. And so in this particular case, he's not eligible to run for another term. But it's solely about eligibility. It's under the section of eligibility for the mayor and the commission. It does not talk about appointment or whether the commission can or cannot appoint a person for a temporary interim term.
Okay, well, I think that's an important distinction to make, the difference between an actual running for election versus appointment.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Commissioner?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I in good conscience can't support a process that doesn't allow for people to apply for the position. And I respect Mr. White, and his thing has nothing to do with him. I mean, he had an opportunity to run for re-election, and he did not choose to do that. I think you ran. And so I think the process has to be opened up to the public to take applications to see who the best candidate is. I'm a firm believer that if you don't, you got to see what's out there. And hiring a city manager, if that's of the utmost importance, that's an HR function. That is the ability to understand someone's leadership, understands their capacity to do a position. We all know a little bit about affordable housing now, but I don't think any of us got it figured out. So the idea that someone's going to come in with the knowledge to help us solve all these other issues, maybe they have some ability to help influence those, maybe they don't. But yeah, I think this has to be opened up to a public process, and if it's not, I can't support just hiring or appointing someone without opening it up to the community.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, I came this morning prepared to discuss what we were going to do, and now I feel like I'm reacting to a plan. But I think that I don't know Jim, so I can't vote on moving forward with that without a chance to at least have a conversation with some people that I respect about whether or not that's a good pick for the position. But I too agree that it needs to be open. I think that the mistrust that we experience as elected officials is because we try, it seemed like we're handpicking someone who's going to vote the way that we want them to vote. And so I think that given an open process, because that city manager search really is the number one thing, I want that to be clean. And so like I'm thinking, in this discussion, I'm thinking about how this decision impacts how clean that feels to the community. And then I think that the transparency and having it be an open process for both, as much as I don't want all that work, because it sounds like it's a lot of work to do that, but to me that further validates our pick of city manager if we have an open process for a seat that's 1 out of 7 votes for that position. So yeah, that's just where I'm at right now. I want to be able to pick a city manager and have the community say they did a really honest, open, transparent process for that, and this is 1 out of 7 votes for that pick. So I think it's, in some ways, it's just as significant. That's just my gut reaction to it.
No, I appreciate that feedback, and that's what this conversation is about. So after last Tuesday, Commissioner Lanier got together and we really wrapped our heads around this and thought about what is needed at this moment in time, and as well as taking feedback from the community about process and really thinking about the election next year and wanting to be mindful that Third Ward voters are going to have an opportunity to vote on the seat really a year from now. And so other thought, Commissioner Lanier, do you want to respond to either of those? We talked a lot about thoughts similar to that, pros and cons, as well as making sure that the community does have a chance to weigh in. This is a recommendation, and it would be great to hear from Third Ward residents about this recommendation.
Yeah, I think, and they'll have that opportunity at nightly meetings until the moment that we make the final decision. So we're not proposing to make any decisions today, Commissioner Reppert. But I respect your comments, Commissioner O'Connor, and as well as yours, Commissioner Reppert, that this is a very difficult decision. And for me, I agree that having a process ideally would be the best thing to do, if we were in a different stage in so many of the discussions that we're having, I would hands down say that's the way to go. But I feel like the decisions that need to be made potentially could come even before we could get through a process to fill the seat, or, you know, it'll just all kind of happen all at the same time. And I think what you will get if we were to go through a process is someone who, because of lack of understanding of this work, which I think is critical to making the decision, you have to fully understand the work of the city manager. And I know that people believe they understand this work, but I think all of us, once you sat in the seat, you realize, oh boy, this is more than I thought it was. And I think someone who already knows the responsibility of a city manager, and this city manager piece is just one of many critical decisions, Commissioner O'Connor, that I feel like we need to make within the next 6 months. And so to have someone who fully understands that, to be able to make a critical decision on his own, standing on his own, because he's done that, I think is what's needed, as opposed to having someone coming in trying to fully understand this work as they're making some of those decisions. So for the same reasons that you've outlined are the reasons that I think it's best to have someone who has the experience to be able to make those decisions without necessarily voting the same way Sunita's voting, per se, or the way you're voting, because you're just kind of relying on the person next to you who can share enough information to convince you. Commissioner White can stand on his own 2 feet, and he'll be able to assess and make whatever decisions based on his own vetting of the critical decisions that we need to make.
Yeah. Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't think that there's I think whatever decision we make, it's not, or there stands the chance of it not being the most popular in terms of what the community has to say. I would suspect that we will have members of the community who will be in an uproar about the potential of having someone appointed without going through a very public process. And I can respect that. As one who went through it, I can respect that. As one who actually scratches his head and asks himself, why did you go through that? I can understand. However, I think that there is no easy answer, and I believe that what we have to take into consideration is the ability to have someone who essentially is filling a gap for a very short period of time in which we know we would know their start date and their end date in terms of serving. And I really do believe that there's value and significant value in having someone who can hit the ground running. I do. I consider myself very fortunate in that I had the benefit of kind of hanging around City Hall and being engaged in different committees and such over the years and kind of knowing my way around. But I also know that had it not been for that, the learning curve, I think, would have been much more significant. I'm not saying that what we do is rocket science, but it's not easy either. And I think that with someone like a Jim White, you get someone who, there is no learning curve. I think that there is wisdom in having someone who was here for the last city manager search and was a part of that process. I think there's benefit there. I also think that, again, there's going to be an opportunity for the community to have voice as to what they think the response or the direction should be that we go in. But ultimately, I think that it gives whoever has an interest in being the next Third Ward City Commissioner some time to prepare for that very election that's coming up in about a year and a half. And I think it's that time in which they can use to take a good hard look, perhaps have some conversations with each and every one of us about our experiences, and to see if it's something that they want to do. I think, again, at the end of the day, there will be those who will see this as, who could see it or frame it as something that's being very unfair. But, you know, as someone who has known Jim White for a very long time, aren't too many folks in our town with that type of integrity. And so if anybody wants to question the merits of appointing someone, I can understand that. But I think when you're talking about the potential of appointing someone with the track record and the integrity of a Jim White, I'm willing to have that debate because of my personal knowledge of his personhood. And so I look forward to having further discussions about this and making the decision once that time comes.
Thanks. Commissioner O'Connor, and then I'll come back over you.
If Jim White's the guy, then go through the process, put yourself up against other people in public, let me see who those people are, and let me make a decision. And if you come out on top, you come out on top. That's how it works. And to find out that 10 minutes before we got out here today that the mayor and my colleague Sunita were going to, this was the plan, this is what they had discussed. If we don't like the process because we don't get to call an election and we got to go through some process where it's uncomfortable and people have to come out and apply and you have to go through a rigorous thing. I didn't have to do it. You had to do it, Commissioner Jones, and you had to do it, Commissioner Kelly. I don't envy that process. But if we don't like the process, let's change the process. But let's not just make an appointment unless we're really putting someone out there and letting the public see that, if they're truly the best candidate for the job, then stand in front of a microphone in front of this dais and show me you're the best candidate for this job. And if not, then, again, in good conscience, I can't do it this way.
Okay. Commissioner Lenny?
So I think he stood before the Third Ward citizens twice, and they made a decision. And so they've already spoken about whether he's the best person to sit at this table. And so in light of that, that's another reason he's a good fit for that. I think the other piece too, Commissioner O'Connor, is I think it's disingenuous to have in mind who you want and send people through a process knowing what the outcome is going to be. I personally try to treat people. Your vote counts the same as mine, though. You're going to let me finish talking. I personally prefer to treat people the way I want to be treated, and I wouldn't want to go through a process where there was already someone that these people have in mind, or at least a couple of them. And so in light of that, instead of developing a process that's disingenuous, I'm just being honest upfront at the beginning to say there's a need that we have and it's quite unique. I'm respecting your opinion and why you feel the way you feel. I totally understand your perspective, but I also have my opinion and I have my perspective as well, and I'm just sharing that. And I'm being as open and as honest as possible to be able to share this with this public, this very difficult position that we are in right now. And this is just the result of what the conversations that we've had. This is the result of that.
Let's put it on the floor, vote it up and down, and we'll live with the consequences.
Commissioner Holdup, I want to speak to your question about process, because that was one of the initial questions we had. Are we bound by a certain process? And we're not. We have done an interview process in the past when we've had openings on the City Commission, but we are not bound by that. So the language is very clear that our job is to appoint someone to fill a vacancy. And the conversation was really looking at this as a vacancy and filling someone as an interim, knowing that the voters will have a chance next year to elect the person to replace Commissioner Allen. And so the process piece, I want to be very clear, there's nothing that ties us to processes that we've used in the past. And we're having that conversation with city manager right now. There are parts of the process that we used last time that we want to do differently, and we're going to have a different process because of that. So again, I want to make it very clear that we're not violating any rules.
I understand we're not violating anything.
But I want to just be really clear, and I totally respect your opinion as well, but I don't want there to be an implication that somehow we're violating some process that we are bound to, which we are not. So I just want to be really clear about that, because I don't want that to be misconstrued. Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's important. My very first question to this was, can we do this?
That was my question too.
Yeah, and, but I do think that the way that we have done it in the past is what the community expects. And so I think for my sake and for all your sake, I would like for the community to trust us more and more with every decision we make. And I feel like switching that, at least for me, to not be able to have a chance to ask them and get their take about it would be a chink in that trust. And so I don't have somebody in mind, so I've been racking my brain of people who I know who live in the 3rd Ward, and I have no idea who would have come forth. And so there is a large part of me that wants to see who might. I'm sure that former Commissioner White is an exceptional person, but I don't know him, and I would love the chance to ask him some questions. And if we did this, I wouldn't have that opportunity. So I do think that I'm glad that it's legal if we decide to go that route. But that's helpful.
It is. Our
That's
city
helpful.
attorney has weighed in.
But again, this is going to be a person that's going to sit, right next to me. They're going to fill this chair, and I'm going to be leaning over to this person, and I would like to at least have a chance to ask a few questions of who that's going to be.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I think some of us, obviously, having served with Commissioner White and know him,
Sure.
we're in a different position.
Sure.
And I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Jones that Commissioner White has unbelievable integrity. He's well respected. He's incredibly not just wise, but a strong policymaker and thoughtful and pragmatic. Bless you. And so having that relationship and that working experience with him in the past obviously impacts my opinion. And today is a discussion about next steps. And this is after multiple conversations and thinking about process. This is a process that and a recommendation that is coming forward. And we're going to have an opportunity to hear from the community about this recommendation. And so, Commissioner Lanier, any final thoughts from you?
No, well, yes, I appreciate the feedback and the comments that you all have made. I think, maybe we could set something up so that commissioners who may not personally know Commissioner White could have, or, may not know his work, and maybe we can set something up in between to make sure that happens before the final vote.
Yes. So we'll revisit this at our next meeting. Again, the value of having some time with Commissioner Allen not being done until June 12th, we'll be able to revisit this. Again, we wanted to have this conversation publicly. This will give a chance to the community and largely the 3rd Ward to weigh in on this recommendation. And then we can bring it back forward for a conversation at our next meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any final thoughts? All right. So next, Commissioners, we need to go into executive session for 2 legal opinions. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Support?
All right. This is a voice vote. Commissioner Rapart?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
And Jones?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So Commissioners, please join us down in the law library immediately.
Come back. No.
Mayor,
I don't think we are coming back.
do we have evaluation discussions
Oh, we
today? And we need to
do.
vote those in as well, I think?
We do.
Probably
We have
not
2 of
for
them.
clerk.
Actually, I think we were gonna keep the clerk one.
Oh, we are? Okay.
I prepared a huge report, you bet you're having. Worked hard on it.
So it's for our clerk and our attorney. So can we also get a motion to go in executive session for performance reviews?
So moved. Support?
All right, and I can do voice vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, and those are at 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock.
Yep.
All right.
You're ready, huh?
All right.